Welcome back, Shaman King fans, to another episode of What's the Difference? The series where we compare a given media's various different adaptations. In the case of Shaman King, it's the adaptations of the 2001 anime and the 2021 anime. Last episode, not really too much to compare between the two animes, as the original anime, the only real bit of connective tissue was the fact that Hao was nearing obtaining the power of the Shaman King, and the struggle of Yo and his friends to stop that process. In the original, Hao is trying to take the power by force. In the manga and newer anime, Hao has been officially given that power, and Yo and his friends are simply trying to stop the process by fighting their way through the patch. So we'll be looking at the manga, volume 33, chapter 294 first, titled Last Test, Shaman Fight, episode 63 of the 2001 series, titled A Place Where I Belong, and episode 51 of the 2021 series, titled Last Test, Shaman Fight. The newer anime has been a little bit more faithful in certain places, but has still kept to its nature of excluding certain bits of dialogue, which from a certain standpoint helps to tighten up the runtime of the story. It can also be a bit to its detriment, as a lot of that dialogue helps to make sure that the audience understands certain elements. So whereas the original anime took a lot of its time and was a bit more of a slow burn, and a lot of the audience appreciated that, the newer anime, much to its detriment, has sped through a good chunk of the series and has lost a few people because of that. So let's continue on with our journey as we're in the penultimate, second to last episode of each version of the anime of Shaman King, and let's check out what's the difference. Okay, first we start off in the glacier plant, where everyone comes face to face with Silva once more, and thus Yo will face him, his former mentor and teacher. I love that the manga harkens back to that day that they first met. It's actually very nostalgic, although I will admit certain elements here are a bit jarring to me, and if you have any information that'll help me understand better, feel free to say it in the comments below. But Silva before had a very darker demeanor, as though he had been brainwashed. But as Yo and Silva have this conversation, Silva talks to Yo in a very familiar tone, I should say. And the idea was always that Silva had been brainwashed, manipulated, changed, or something, and the face-off against Silva would be a little bit more melancholy. But here it's presented more like Silva just simply came to an understanding. I don't know if it was a last-minute idea by Hiroyuki as a whole to make the patch a little bit more sympathetic, because the patch for a while there was starting to feel very devious. But as Yo and his friends made their way through the plant, while some of the patch were a little bit more overly antagonistic, and let's face it, they were trying to kill Yo and his friends, there was time and time again that Yo and the others could feel that there was something deeper going on with the patch, and how they felt towards the whole situation of Hao's ascension. And now Silva gives this last minute kind of speech about how important love is, and how it's important not to fight for yourself but for others, because to fight with love in your heart is a true form of freedom and can bring out a great form of power. Something that we've seen Yo exhibit time and time again, especially in the last few chapters with the patch. And it's odd to me as Silva says that now he fights for others rather than just himself. And I wonder, is it that he's simply saying that he fights for Yo in order to help Yo gain the strength he needs to overcome Hao? Or was it in regards to something else? That was my takeaway ultimately, especially since he says this fight is his final gift to Yo, the last test. Although the final gift line is mostly in the manga. And Yo seems to understand this and he doesn't fight with any hesitation. Like, they have this look of they both know what they need to do. And I really do love this moment. I just feel like I wish I could have experienced more to it. But I guess that's okay because, Silva has kind of accepted that he may die here and is completely fine with it. I mean, it's an intense clash too. It is unfortunate that they leave out Ryu's reaction where he's just like, he wants to join in, but Ren kind of says, be quiet and watch. They're talking, don't interrupt. Like, I love the manga's portrayal of Ren in a lot of situations, and I hate that they leave out a good chunk of his dialogue in the anime because I guess they felt that it wastes a little bit too much time or is unimportant to some degree, but it also I feel that it shows an insight to Ren. Like, Ren understands Yo on a level that you wouldn't have even thought he would have been able to. Like, Ren's personality, his demeanor has just slowly shifted more and more over time, where he just understands Yo and his nature so much at this point. We get one more appearance of the totem pole cannon, which is always awesome. A point blank shot, which, you gotta remember how that used to be the most dangerous thing, the totem pole cannon coming out. But Yo, he is almost completely unfazed. Also, going back, I love that the anime chose to show how Yo managed to block the shot. In the manga, it's more like he just managed to survive it, but I kind of like the anime showing that no, he used his armored oversoul to block it, something that wouldn't have even seemed feasible to Yo previously, something that shows that they're a lot more on even ground, and Yo just going at it fiercely, and they're just blocking each other's attacks. And Silva says he still has a lot to show him. And then Silva forms his ultimate weapon, Oversoul Flesh and Blood Spear. So instead of having multiple forms of offense, defense, maneuverability, everything he has been just migrated right to his attacking power. And I gotta say, I love how this looks. Even in the manga, in the anime, both do wonderful in just showing the destructive power of this. They cut out some of Silva's thoughts that it's just like, hey, your Byaku's been crushed, and you're in the cold, the icy cold of the deep. Are you going to panic? Are you going to lose yourself to this icy environment? But I will admit, the anime having a moment where you see Yo using Amidamaru's dual-wielding style, and then he just summons back his Byaku, and they clash. Like, there's so many good qualities to both the manga and the anime, which is surreal to say. But, like, just in this fight alone, you are seeing some great choreography on behalf of the anime and some great paneling in terms of the manga. Like, Hiroyuki just was going all in at this point. I mean, because he had time to really just kind of think about how he wanted things to be capped off. And they clash and they battle. Like, just again, Silva and Yo being on such an even keel, going face to face, head to head. Just the thought that it was only now that Yo was able to do this. And Silva's monologue that Yo has grown so strong. He was the one who taught him how to summon an oversoul, and now he's just become so great and grown so much. And Silva is recognizing that Yo is beyond him now. It's not just that they're even. No, Yo is better than him. Silva recognizes this. And while part of me says that it's sometimes hard to tell if some part of the patch isn't holding back, but is always reiterated by Yo and some of the gang that no, the patch are going all in. There's no hesitation, there's no reservations, because they know that in doing this, at least in a lot of instances, that this will help Yo and the others to grow strong. This is a trial in order to be like, hey, if you're going to oppose this person, if you have the will and conviction to oppose them, we should not be something that can stand in your way. You should be able to overcome us easily, because willpower is the ultimate form of power. And it's a hell of a thing. And even the final strike it's built up a little bit better in the anime, but I love seeing the clash, fully seeing the final clash in the manga and the way it's presented, as that's the end of volume 33 and entering into volume 34, which, God, I love this cover. Now we enter into chapter 295, After the Dream. And I think this scene plays out a little bit differently in both iterations, both manga and anime, but I think they both play out very well. There's a more of an intense nature in the manga and more of a gentle nature in the anime. And I don't think either one is a bad choice. As Silva kind of gives these final words to Yo, as we see that Yo has managed to run Silva through, with his final words ultimately being just, hey, you hesitate just a little too much. You're wonderful, you're powerful, but there is that slight hesitation, and that's what you need to get past. Otherwise, pass with flying colors. Oof, it's such a great thing. And then you pick up with what was an additional little chapter, because the chapter titled After the Dream was originally just like a 3-4 page afterthought when the original release of the manga ended, because things ended right as Yo and his friends were going to bed at Calem's farm plant or whatever, and they were dreaming of Princess Hao. And you had this little thing where it was kind of like, hey, things will continue in the future kind of moment. And you had Manta waking up, where the whole Princess Hao imagery was like a memory of his, or a horrible dream as he puts it. And Manta kind of recaps a lot of what had happened up until that point, with Manta wishing he had gone with Yo and the others. I gotta say though, I love that the anime included this little bit here where we see everyone in their battle attire and what have you, facing off against Princess Hao, who, I gotta say, man, Hao as a princess, just, I don't know, it's very beautiful. like, man, Hao is pretty. I gotta tell you. And the way that everyone looks in their RPG attire, I guess, is a nice little homage. I don't know. It's just like they were just like, hey, we have the designs. Why not just do at least a little bit more with the RPG look? And Manta's wish that he could help out to some degree, some way. Only for Anna to show up with a tied up Anahole. And Anahole had basically been tied up to help out. In the original chapter, it mostly just looked like Anna had beat up Anahole, or like she challenged him to a fight and she beat his ass, and it was just like the terms of his defeat was to take them. But here it just mostly it's kind of been reworked for this volume of the manga and the anime to be more like Anna's just forcing him in general. And Anahole's just kind of rolling with it. It's the underwater version of the Sphinx. Like, some of the dialogue is like a combination of the reworking Hiroyuki did to be released in the actual updated version of the manga, and a little bit of that original, like, 4-page extra special or whatever. Because you never even saw who was actually on board the Sphinx sub, or even the statement that they were going to deliver the elemental spirits and all that. But it was also a way of getting everyone who was still kind of left on the island out of there, who at least wanted to try to help Yo and the others defeat Hao. And the statement, we can't just leave things here, can we? Like, it was almost like a statement from Hiroyuki to the audience, oh, we're not just gonna end things like this. And a statement that she's not gonna give up the princess's throne, that's not included in the updated manga. Like, if you're reading the updated manga, you'd never have that line that she's not gonna give up being the princess role, which I think is like a cute little thing for Anna to say. I'm sorry that was such a tangent, but that's one of the few things I actually appreciate from the anime, where they just basically were just like, we're gonna take a little bit from what happened in the re-release volume, where Hiroyuki redrew the whole scene and situation, and we're gonna take a little bit from that, 4-panel 4-page special that was basically him saying that, yeah, one day Shaman King will be back, just not anytime soon. And thus our heroes reach the outer space planet. And everybody's just like, what the hell? A lot of the dialogue is cut out, but a lot of them commenting, space? What does that mean? What should we expect? How would they even do this? How would they recreate space? There's no air, there's no gravity. I mean, the Patch have done a lot of wild things, so maybe they could do that too. And radiation, debris, and basically they're just like, okay, we better create like an oversoul insulated suit, space suit, to make it so that we don't like die from whatever exposure is out there. But then Ryu wanting to be, majorly helpful because, well, it's been a hot minute and we're starting to hit upon the furthest Ryu can really go with all of this. He wants to be the one to create the insulation so that they don't use up the rest of their Furyoku. And while Ren wants to ignore it as that would kind of make him a bit of a target, Ryu's kind of fine with that. It's just like, he feels like with the way things have been going, and this is kind of something that was undercut by the fact that in the previous fight with Silva, Ryu was taken more off guard by a lot of things. With each fight, Ryu just can't follow how things have been going, and a lot of that has been cut out from time to time. Ryu's commentary that really shows off that Ryu is starting to understand just how out of his depth he's really gotten with a lot of these battles. Ryu feels that this is probably the most he can really do, as he really has just loved being with these guys and he wants to play at even just a small part. And Yo agrees to it, of course. Like, if that's what needs to happen, he's down. Alright, and here we head to the last plant, the outer space plant, and thus they're greeted with Rutherford, the last Pachafenti. And I love how everyone freaks out. It's just like, oh my god, it's an alien! But then Ren is just like, aliens are fake, it's an imposter, I'm going in. But then we see Rutherford's abilities, and it's actually gravity manipulation. Some of Rutherford's lines are dropped too, which give Rutherford a lot of their personality, which I think is a bit of a shame because I really do love Rutherford. Again, my favorite patch officiant, just because, like, dude, gravity manipulation, that's so cool. And all of Rutherford's moves are based off of alien stuff, like it's called Mysterious Circle in one version or Crop Circle in another, and it just, binds Ren and sends him flying back, and Super Mystery Circle, which sends them all flying back. Like, this is why Rutherford is the final opposition, because the space plant, that's just, it's a tough thing to deal with. And now we get into chapter 296, Close Encounters of the Patch Kind. And while they were blasted back, everybody seems okay. Even Ren. And Ren, he doesn't want to believe that it's an actual alien that they're fighting and going up against. But Rutherford's willing to go in again and attacks once more with an attack called Cattle Mutilation, which is just like, yo. But it basically binds everyone in like a gravity well or whatever, and they're having a difficult time fighting against it. But then Rutherford kind of makes a bit of a mistake in revealing that this is actually their armored oversoul, Grey Saucer. And then Yo is just like, oh wait, there is a person inside of there. But then they're just like, wait, what spirit is that? And Rutherford's just like, well, it's an alien. I was telling you the truth. This is the power of an alien. Which, again, I've said it before in my reaction. A shonen series being like, hey, aliens are real. That's nothing new. Anyone who gets bent out of shape about this revelation is just like, you haven't watched enough shonen anime. Between Dragon Ball going from a fantasy series to being like aliens, to if you've read the One Piece manga, you know aliens exist there. And in Naruto, which was very, fanciful, chakra and all that, only to find out, how did chakra come to Naruto's world? Aliens. The Otsutsuki. Aliens. Like, it is very not uncommon for aliens just to be brought up in what seems like a fantasy series at this point. And Rutherford's explanation that, yeah, aliens have been to this planet various different times throughout history, leaving their mark here and there. A bit of knowledge, a bit of technology, always helping mankind move forward by leaps and bounds, and the one who taught the Patch a lot of what they're able to do, and why the Patch have been so powerful over the centuries is because of an alien. Before even the days of the Shaman fight, a UFO landed near the ancient Patch village. The alien was, beaten up and very close to death. I love that they add a little bit more detail in the anime too, of the Patch's interaction with the alien, and they took the alien in, lived with him for a hot minute, because, look, Native Americans, history goes back far that, some tribes were actually very nice, all things considered. They'd be like, oh, okay, this is a strange person, but at the same time, it's just like, oh, you eat, you drink, you need food, water, tending to your injuries. Okay, as long as you can pull your weight, we're down. We'll help you survive as best we can. And so while the Patch used their medicines and helped out the alien taught them of technology. In fact, the Oracle Bell is one of the things that the alien taught them about. And what brought this alien to Earth in the first place? Curiosity, a want for understanding, a want to help others be able to evolve and grow, and develop even greater. But unfortunately, while there are those who love knowledge for the sake of knowledge and the betterment of their kind, knowledge left unchecked can lead to disaster. Desires can grow dark and vile, and in the process of wants you can bring pain and suffering. The ways of the heart. Rutherford even exposes that maybe the Shaman fight started as a way of maybe obtaining the ultimate form of knowledge, maybe to find out why people suffer in general, and if there was a way of maybe ending that. But also, this was a great way of wasting time. And the Shaman King's about to awaken, so it's just like, okay, now it's time for me to just deal with you guys. And while everybody starts to be crushed flatter than a pancake, Yo, now knowing what he's up against, actually now knows how to deal with all of this. And he apologizes in advance for harming her, because one of the techniques of the Book of How, as I always put it, is mana negation, which I've heard people point out that a lot of the techniques learned from Hao's book are very ill-defined on how they can be implemented, and I will admit, sometimes it's not really explained just how many different weird techniques are in there, but I think that was also Hiroyuki's way of getting around having any kind of set limit on what he could do. But using that, Yo is able to get around Rutherford's abilities and easily destroys Rutherford's armored oversoul. And you see Rutherford is a cute little girl. Well, a cute young lady. And Yo's just like, well, your oversoul's been destroyed, and being out here in the vacuum of space is probably not doing too well in the few seconds you have left. But you might need to deal for just a second. But then the Oracle Bell sounds on everyone, and it reads very ominously, so small. What is it in Japanese? Chichi-ue. And the words echo throughout as the plant loses its activity. And Rutherford knows what this means. And we see Godiva, which I like that the anime was just like, yeah, where did Lip and Rap go? Because the manga, Hiroyuki completely forgot about them in the manga, I think. And you see it. Oh, I love the way it's displayed in the manga with these heavy inks. Not to say that the anime doesn't do a good job too, but word, it's so ominous in the manga. The king has awoken. Alright, and now, popping into the original anime, episode 63, A Place Where I Belong, where Hao just kind of mocks all of them, saying that, oh, you only suffer because you just couldn't give it up. Your destruction was inevitable. Give it up. But of course, Yo's friends aren't giving up, despite how outmatched they very much are, and how it just really puts down their friendship. Meanwhile, those who have come in order to help out are surrounded by those who are just like, yep, Hao has won. He's going to win. We won't let you interfere. So this is kind of a substitute for the patch and them, riling against those who would try to stop Hao. And the Asakura family, seeing that this might be the end, Hao has too much power, they might not be able to actually stop any of this, and everyone trying their best while Yo is incapacitated. While Hao does find that, yes, their power isn't anything to scoff at, it's just nothing in comparison to him, and Hao just can't understand why they're trying so hard against the inevitable. You guys have never had any chance of winning, but Yo and his friend, Yo's friends are just like, no, we won't give up. And I love their belief that Yo still exists. Even if his soul has been absorbed into Hao's, he still exists. That he still exists as kind of a part of them. It's a very sweet and sentimental situation, and this pisses off Hao. I will admit, power scaling in the series is a little bit wonky because it's just like, man, your giant oversouls keep getting broken and you keep just managing to reform them over and over again. Is there no limit to how many times you can do this or what? But even in the manga, it can sometimes be a little bit wonky, despite the fact that they have added hard numbers to how you form your oversoul and stuff. Despite everything, they keep fighting, and Hao's starting to get pissed and saying that their strength comes from Yo. It's so very Shonen, saying how they'll never give up. It'll always work out somehow, and then Hao feels it. Yo's soul manages to find its way back. Somehow, some way, hearkened to by the souls of his friends. I gotta admit, it's a pretty damn hype moment. Yo is ready to go back into the fight, as Amidamaru was actually able to call out to Yo's soul, even within Hao's soul. It's a tremendously hopeful moment that, it just really does so much, as Yo is ready to get back into the fight. And you can see how shaken Hao is, as everything didn't go according to plan, which is such a massively stark contrast to the manga and newer anime, where we pick up in chapter 297, Shaman King, God End Part 1, where we see all of Yo's other allies having realized that the Shaman King has awakened. We see all of the allies where, as in the original anime, they were busy trying to fight to get to Yo and help out in whatever way they could. You also had them traveling in the manga and newer anime to arrive and help out, only for them to realize, yep, we were too late. And then suddenly, boom! They all die in a massive explosion. Jean feels this, that he is awoken. They cut out some of her lines that it's just like, the plant's gone silent and many lives were just snuffed out. And this overwhelming feeling of sadness. You've awoken, haven't you? How? And then Jean is struck down. Then they cut out her final words, which is, he is all-seeing, all-knowing, and more powerful than all things in nature combined. All hope is lost. And unlike in the original anime where you had this great moment of triumph, we're gonna make it, we're gonna stop Hao before he obtains the power of the Shaman King, here, it's too late. He already has it. The thought that everything would work out somehow. And I love, honestly, both the manga and anime's way of showing the just sense of despair that just overcomes everything. And Yo's thoughts, believing that it'll all work out somehow. Even in a desperate situation, we tried to believe that things would work out right up into the end. And that was easy to believe at first. But now, with this overwhelming sense of despair, everything gets swept to the side. Things won't work out. Like, it's just like, holy shit. It's the most overwhelming sense of despair that is just washed over the entire series all of a sudden. I mean, granted, in the original anime, you got that from when Yo was absorbed by Hao, but at least you had everyone else just kind of on the scene, ready to kind of throw down, but everything is just punctuated by Godiva showing up, and they unfortunately cut out her telling everyone to run, that a lot of her more empathetic words are kind of left out, but her telling, the new king has awakened, Lip and Rap looked at him and died. Their souls ripped out in the blink of an eye. Her wish that Hao had at least let them choose how they died is like, it's almost like Godiva has gone mad just looking upon Hao and just feeling the power that he kind of like just exudes. And then Big Chief is destroyed, Godiva is destroyed, annihilated, and thus stands Hao, the Shaman King. And I gotta tell you, I love this moment where everyone's just silent, not even acknowledging him fully. The first one who does is Ryu, and he gazes upon Hao, and immediately his soul is ripped out of his body. I gotta admit, I didn't really realize what was going on in the manga when I first read it. I just saw Ryu fall to the ground all of a sudden. It's like, wait, what is going on? And then it's only afterwards you actually see Tokagero form back into a soul ball, and you see Godiva, Ryu, and Tokagero's souls just sucked in to Hao, and Rutherford is just utterly shocked by this callous display of power. Hao targets Rutherford, and good on Chocolove and Horohoro for trying to go in and save her, but they're dropped as well, and just everyone falls in an instant. I gotta admit, the manga, you can linger on these moments and kind of take in what's slowly happening. I actually do love how in the anime, it just happened. There's no pomp, no circumstance. The only one you actually lingered on for a bit was Ryu's, because that's the first display that he could just suck out your soul with a look. Even one as, should be as capable as Ryu, and he just does it in an instant for everyone. Everyone falls, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And it just happens in rapid succession. And Rutherford realizes that this is the face of absolute power. And this is the ultimate ruler of the cosmos. The Shaman King, a true god. And I also love the ominous nature of Opachao realizing that's not Hao. Hao's far nicer than this. Hao is gone. And as Hao goes for Opachao, just slices him down right then and there. Off comes his head. And Yo's just mad because he realized it's just a meat puppet. It's just Hao's body being controlled by Hao's spirit, just in a place beyond. It's a very dark situation, honestly speaking. Hao's empty shell falling to the ground, and just the mix of emotions on Yo's face, as it's, Hao just kinda getting the rise he wanted from Yo, and Hao just callously ending Yo right there and then. Amidamaru wasn't able to fully guard Yo, but I do love that was Amidamaru's last act to try to protect Yo right up into the end. But Yo falls as well, and Rutherford sees it. Total annihilation. Everyone fades to white. Again, such a massive contrast to the original anime, where it's just like, Yo has returned, hope has returned. He strikes back at Hao. Hao doesn't know how this can be, but Yo has come back to his friends, to the place where he belongs, to try his damnness to beat Hao. So instead of a scene of despair, we've grown out of the despair, and Hao's just losing himself to his anger, and everyone sees the battle raging on. Jean over here telling the people to believe and hope, and you got more allies showing up to try to fight against Hao and whoever might be siding with him. And it starts to look like maybe Hao is starting to lose ground and footing, and Opachao acknowledges that Hao is starting to get frustrated and angry, and Hao just doesn't want to acknowledge how angry he is. And whereas in the manga and newer anime, how scaring Oppa-Chow was something he didn't even acknowledge. He was above all that. But because here, where Hao is, he's still in his mortal body, he's kind of losing himself to his emotion because he's being looked upon with fear just like he was back then. And then, again, in all versions, Oppa-Chow acknowledges that Hao isn't the Hao that he used to be. You know, it's presented as more of a lonely moment than the scary moment in the manga and newer anime. But Hao decides to go all out. And he just decides to say, screw it, I'm just going for the Great Spirit. And sends in the Spirit of Fire to devour the Great Spirit. Which, I won't lie, it's kind of interesting considering the Spirit of Fire is an aspect of the Great Spirit, and thus the Spirit of Fire has gained immense power from the Great Spirit. It's kind of unknown whether or not the Spirit of Fire is just merged with the Great Spirit, or has just obtained a fraction of the Great Spirit's power, and in like all versions, Hao has obtained the power of the Great Spirit, and is just ready to just unleash Ragnarok upon all who live, easily cutting down everyone with little to no effort. So in all versions, Hao just easily dispatches pretty much everyone. And Jean says, let us pray that the light of hope hasn't gone out yet, as everyone is desperately battling to stop Hao. Hao is taking everyone down left, right, and center. And it really starts to look at, like, again, in all versions, Hao obtains this Great Spirit and just wipes out everyone. But Yo refuses to give up, and Hao's all too happy to oblige in making Yo suffer. And they clash once more, as everyone can only just look on, not able to do anything. It's a pretty cool desperate struggle, if I do say so. The question of who will come out on top, which ends the episode. Yo versus Hao, the final struggle. Meanwhile, in the manga and newer anime, Yo's struggle didn't go as well as in the original anime, where it's just like, oh, I was killed by Hao, so I must be in the afterlife in the Great Spirit. In other words, inside of Hao. And this is how Hao and Yo become one in the manga and newer anime. So in all versions, Hao does to an extent merge with Yo, it's just the circumstances behind them are different. But again, I still love the parallels. I must say, I do wonder how many ideas Hiroyuki got from the original anime, because by this point in the manga, the original anime had long since come to a close. And I always have to wonder in situations like that, because I know that Hiroyuki, he enjoyed the original anime a lot, so much that he wouldn't allow them to make the reboot without being able to at least get a lot of the original voice cast back again. But I always wonder, did he see the original anime's conclusion and was just like, yeah, that's cool, but I'd rather have done it a little bit like this. But Yo meets Hao within the Great Spirit, which is also kind of Hao. Yo reacts in an effort to try to fight back, but Hao's just like, I mean, what can you really do with all of that here? You are within the greatest uppermost part of the Great Spirit, the Shaman King's commune, a place where only Hao and those he permit to be there actually exist. No one else can get there. No one can see them. So he tells Yo to relax. And, well, interestingly enough, Yo does just that. And he asks Hao, well, what are you gonna do next? And Hao's just like, oh, I'm gonna destroy humanity, of course. Yo is just like, is that what you're really gonna do? And Hao says, are you gonna try to stop me? And then, Yo's thing of being like, well, I'm not really the biggest fan of people. And Hao reveals that, well, that's why, certain people like Hao and Anna are kind of drawn to him, because despite Yo's nature, he is, in his own ways, a bit antisocial. Yo was always told by his grandfather that humans are like cancer. They devour the host that they live on, multiply, and invade. They grow too fast and eventually just kill the very thing that they live on. And humanity is basically going to ruin eventually. The only way to turn things around would be to destroy all of humanity, or to subjugate them with a great power. Which is very interesting that was Yo's kind of ideal, but I mean, it's kind of the deeper underlying feelings that Yo had towards everything, because when you think about it, it's just like Yo saying, oh, I want a nice easy life. It's just like, I mean, the things you'd have to do in order to gain that, I mean, it ain't sunshine and roses when you really think about it. But Yo still lost, and Hao says that's because ultimately you didn't hate humanity enough. That's what determined the victor. You faltered, but now you have nothing to worry about. Everyone you hold near and dear are within me, the Great Spirit. And while the world falls to ruin, you can live in a paradise right here within the Great Spirit. So why are you still so concerned about the earth? And Yo says, because there's no future here. I can't have kids here. I can't think about family. Even if life's easy, what good is it if you're dead? Hal sees that as immature and decides to cast Yo away. Maybe in a few hundreds or thousands of years, Yo might have a different perspective on things. But Yo does not disappear. And Hal's just kind of taken off guard and just like, wait, but this is the Shaman King's coming. My will is absolute. But Yo still says, I still got to do something about you. And Hao realizes Yo possesses the power of the Shaman King as well. But it's not just him. Taoran, Haruki Usui, Chocolove McDonald, and Lyserg Dithil, the version of Chocolove who can see as well. And Hao realizes they have the 5 grand elemental spirits. Because they all have aspects of the Great Spirit, they were able to enter this domain. And Ren explains that, yeah, they came to us when we entered the Great Spirit. And Ren even questions, well, you're the one who killed everyone who had the grand elemental spirit. So it's just like, okay, did you do this on purpose? Well, have a taste of your own power. As he summons the Spirit of Thunder, as he sends out a massive amount of energy, 9 dragon exploding thunder. And Horo calls him out, dude. It's just like, okay, you had to have known this was going to happen. This must be some kind of act. Just say how you truly feel. As he summons the Spirit of Rain and attacks with, I love the translation, because I can't say this in its actual language, but Horo sends out Great Mountain of Ice, and Chocolove brings out the Spirit of Wind, and Chocolove explains that Hurricane there's an alternate translation for an Idio language, which is God of Storm, Hurricane. And so he sends out 270 mile an hour winds, God Breath Hurricane. And then, of course, here comes Lyserg with the Spirit of Fire of all things. And he sends out not the flames of hell, but the flames from the very planet itself, Magma Uppercut. And Yo wonders, are you guys kind of overdoing it just a little bit? But Ren's just like, no, dude, that's barely doing anything to him. We're inside the Great Spirit, where the mind is everything, mental fortitude and all that. Until his spirit is broken, there's nothing we can really do to him. So Ren presents Yo with the Spirit of Earth from Satya and the Gandhara, but Yo's not really sure what he should do with this power. And Hao says, yeah, this is all pointless. I mean, you're way past the time when the 5 grand spirits would have done everything. After all, I command the greatest spirit of all. Don't you know what my spirit ally is? And I love the fact that everyone kind of dismisses him, as they say they're only here to make sure that Hao becomes the best king he can be. And the truth is kind of revealed. This was Yo's plan from the very start. But it wasn't just that this was his plan, it's that Yo realized this was pretty much the only real option. And that was change Hao's heart. And I kind of love that. And Yo originally thought he'd be the only one to kind of go down this path. But he realizes that he wasn't going to be allowed to be the only one to try this. So he's got to have a little help in rehabilitating Hao. And so they're willing to come here and fight him for as long as it takes to persuade Hao to be a grand and gracious king, a nice god, as it were. It's like essentially putting God in his place for a second. And so Hao accepts their challenge, but warns them, you know what death means here, don't you? The total death of your soul. Hao is trying his best to shake them and saying, I have the power of the cosmos. I can show you despair beyond belief. There's no coming back should you end here. And I hate that they cut off him being like, oh, have I changed your minds and all? Instead, just having it being like, oh, but you still insist, right? I guess both translations are fine. Maybe there's other ways of, translating that, but it's also just him being like, oh, do you still want to fight me? Do you still think you can challenge me? Do you still think you can do anything against me? And you see the fortitude in their eyes. They're ready to throw down. And thus, Hao's just like, okay, well, I guess this is goodbye then. And he summons it, the Oversoul, Great Spirit. And thus, you have it. The cliffhanger on every form of media being Hao has the power of the Great Spirit, and it's up to Yo and his friends to do what they can in order to challenge him. See, the only thing that gets me is that in every version, Hao is, if only just a little bit shaken, but he's more dramatically shaken in the original anime, where you could tell he's kind of losing his mind. In the manga and newer anime, it's more like he's just annoyed than outright angry with all of this. It's just like, God damn it, you cheeky little shits. It's not so much that he's angry that they were able to get one over on him. It's more like a dad who's been tricked by a bunch of kids, and it's just like, y'all really want this ass whooping, don't you? But honestly, I love every version of this. Every version of Hao obtaining the power of the Great Spirit, being challenged by Yo and his friends, them trying their hardest and their damnedest to overcome these insurmountable odds, despite everything being stacked against them, their willpower being their strength in order to try to overcome Hao. Honestly speaking, I don't completely prefer one over the other. There are upsides to every version and a little bit of a downside to every version, but this final battle still takes place. But the question becomes, which do you prefer? Do you like the idea of Hao stealing the power of the Great Spirit for his own in a desperate bid to just wipe out everyone who would oppose him turning away the only friend he ever had, who was still standing with him, Opachao? Hao going pretty much mad, and it just being everyone's fortitude that allows them to keep getting back up? Or do you kind of prefer the more desperate situation where it's just like everyone dies? Hao obtains the power of the Great Spirit, he wipes out everyone, but since the souls return to the Great Spirit, which is where Hao is essentially, and with the power of the 5 Grand Spirits, the 5 warriors are able to stay there, as well as Yo, who has a portion of the Great Spirit's power because of his connection to Hao, and they're not so much there to win as it is just to get Hao to become a better version of himself. I will admit, the manga and newer anime's version is a little bit more convoluted than the original anime, where it's mostly just shonen power friendship stuff going on there, but I don't hate either one. But again, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe, that way you don't miss out on the final episode of the What's the Difference Shaman King edition. Or don't, I ain't your daddy, but I still love you like one. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I hope to see you on the next episode. Until then, bye-bye.